But hey, I got my orders. I'm going to Japan. He said, oh, that's great to hear. We talked a little bit. He said, where do you want to live? And he told me, he said, when I was there, I lived at Negishi. Negishi is about an hour from Yokosuka. But I really enjoyed it because it's a small community. It's quiet. You're close to Yokohama.
My father went over ahead of us. He was a captain in the Army. Then my mother and my sister and I followed, and we came by ship. You know, we saw my father standing as the ship came in. It was much more rural. The road in front of our house was not paved. I'm pretty sure it was dirt at that point in 1954.
When we would walk to school, we would go across all these open fields to get to Negishi. It was just open country.
And there were farms. You could hear the chickens cooing in the morning and the cows mooing, and you know, there was always stuff going on down there.
A lot of times we would have friends. What they liked about it is it wasn't crowded. So this is nice, you know, that it kind of spread out. So everybody has a nice yard. It's green. You have trees.
It was heavily wooded. It looks like something I grew up in the South.
Yes, they were huge yards. As a matter of fact, I cut a lot of those yards. They cut the neighbor's yard, and his yard was huge.
The houses seemed like they had a lot of yard. Some of them were like duplexes, but they would all face like a large square of grass, you know.
When it snowed and stuff, we'd ride cardboard boxes down that hill. I mean, you're talking about 1976, 77. There really wasn't a lot. We rode our bikes. We went to every part of the neighborhood. We played at the playground.
You're right. There was nothing special at all in Negishi Heights. It was simply a place to live and go to elementary school.
At that age, I didn't need a lot to do. There was the playground out back. That was like the most awesome thing.
I would get on my bike, and my friend and I would pack a lunch, and we'd head off on our bikes down roads and across fields that nobody ever said, get out of here. You know, this is our land. We were just roaming.
Where we lived, the stairwell to the far back of the yard led down into the Japanese community. So we would always jump the fence and go down there and go to the stores and going to get candy, you know, ice cream, and just, you know, hanging out with the Japanese kids.
She couldn't speak English and I couldn't speak Japanese, but we had such a good time playing together in spite of that.
I usually would hit the candy store. I'd hit the bakery and get the shoe creams and odango. I would hit the arcade and go play some video games. That hasn't changed.
I think maybe because my mom grew up in the country, a farmer's daughter. So she let us wander, and we did a lot of adventuring, and we would go over that fence and explore the hillside.
They could just ride their bikes down and go shopping and go playing with their friends. It was just, there was a lot of freedom there.
We had a maid. Everybody had maids. I don't know if they did that when you were there, but everybody had a maid. Everybody. It was like normal.
My mother taught school at Negishi Heights. So because she was working as well as my father, we had to have a housekeeper and a babysitter. And I remember how close I was to her.
We loved Sumiko. She would go out in the backyard with me sometimes and make clover chain type things. There were little tiny blue flowers my mother called little Susie Runaways, and she'd weave those into it too.
I loved exploring the grandstand. That was fun. And I wish, if I knew then what I know now, I would have taken a lot of pictures, because that is a fascinating building.
The grandstand, the public works center used to be in there. I remember being in Boy Scouts where I went in and we used to use a room in there.
We used to actually go in there and play. The Navy Exchange was in there, the post office. And that was like, you know how you have Area 1, Area 2? That was Negishi's facility.
But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot up in Negishi yet. So if you wanted to do anything, you either had to go off base or you had to go to over by Area 2 where the Navy Exchange used to be.
About 5-10 years of us living up there, they started building the new one. The only thing that was there was the grandstand. And then all that came later.
Community center, which was everything in one building. There was the bank, the movie theater, the commissary, the small post office. There was a library. Walk outside of the building into the big parking lot. There was the swimming pool, the club, then the barracks, the gas station. So everything we needed was there.
We never had gates. You know, like now I think there's gates. We never had gates. You know, you could just drive in, drive out.
It was pretty much an open road. It was not manned. It wasn't, I mean, anyone could have came in if they wanted to. A lot of things I'm sure happened after 9/11.
The type of house in the neighborhood was like something that my parents had grown up. And since we kept on moving around, you know, everything kept on changing. But they had a constant life, constant upbringing. We didn't, because this is the closest thing that we had to what our parents had. So you build a bond off of that.
I don't want to say it in a negative way, but you're kind of out of the fishbowl, meaning far enough away from the base to really kind of submerge yourself into the culture and be part of that culture.
From our backyard, we could look out. There was a drop, and we could look out over the houses that were off base, and that was neat because I felt like I was getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, Negishi, you felt like when you came home, you felt like you were home. It's really nice for families who it was their first experience in Japan because it's not as much culture shock. You definitely got to feel a little bit of those home roots of America, but with Japan in it. So it's kind of both.
That's another wonderful place to live, and we're very happy to have her here in Japan. Her mother has already gotten involved as a volunteer, and we certainly appreciate that. But I'm very
Friendship Day and in the parking lot next to the between the gas station parking lot, that's where we'd have a lot of vendors locally, but a lot of them Japanese, you know, and it would just be flooded with Japanese coming into Negishi to experience the Americana thing and have fun. And sometimes they'd have a band there.
The fire truck would come in and they would take the kids on the ladder up and down. So my kids love that. And of course, the taiko drums. All the taiko shows we loved.
There are a lot of things in Yokohama. My husband and I traveled a lot on the train to different parts of Japan.
We had Landmark Tower there. You could see Mount Fuji on a clear day. You're able to get to Tokyo within like maybe 30 minutes or so.
There was usually somebody around to help. Like we went out in town quite a bit. I mean, the Japanese people are just, they almost always would come up to us and say, you know, can I help you?
Everything was small. The post office, the doctor's office, the commissary, the bowling alley. And because of that, it's almost like you enjoyed it more.
I know a big part of the community was that little restaurant on base. We got to know the servers so well. And it was nice to get to know people like on a level that we walked in, they said our names, they like asked how we were doing, and we could actually talk to them.
We got there. I wasn't excited because it was a foreign country to me. You know, I'd never been far from my family.
My husband was stationed in Yokosuka, and we had a daughter who was going to Yokosuka for middle school. So with her being 45 minutes away, that was a little bit concerning for me. Once we arrived in Negishi, we were thrilled. And I say that because it was an open area. It was safe. You didn't have to worry about traffic. It was such a wonderful community.
Even though there was gossip, because I mean, where isn't there gossip? It was like a small group of friends. We didn't know everybody on the base, but we'd always get together and we'd always babysit. So I liked that sense, you know, they were very welcoming.
お誕生日だからなんて言ってちょっとスパーキーをなんていうようなまあ本当に個人的なんですよこれ。それでもうちらは受けてちゃんとやります。できるときはとにかく協力すると。
みんな根岸が好きだった。あそこに住んでる人はみんな根岸が好きで、みんななんかこうファミリーみたいな感じ。もちろんほらそんなに人が住んでるわけじゃないからさ、毎日顔を合わせればお互いね顔を覚えるし、で周りもやっぱりあれは俺の仕事じゃねえよじゃなくて、みんながこう手伝い助け合う、そういう気持ちはやっぱり生まれたよね。
There's always been discussion about Negishi closing because there were the other housing areas in that area. There was Homoku, there was a housing area there, and they've been closed. So there was discussion about Negishi closing. So it wasn't a surprise.
But I remember it just kind of being like one day you would hear one thing's closed, the next day something else is closed, and this family's moving out, that family's moving out. And it was just kind of like watching like this nice little community you had, and it was just slowly getting smaller and smaller and smaller until finally it came your turn and it's like, hey, you're leaving now.
We cried because to us, that's where our kids were born. So that's home. Even though it's not our home, but it's home.
根岸は多分歴史が長いんだよね。本木のさ、多分エリア1って言われた地域と同じ時期に建てられてるでしょ。本木エリア1はもう先に返還されて日本の住宅地になって、でもそれでも最後まで残ってたのが根岸住宅だったから、またなんかこう思い入れが違うよね。であの辺ってすごいやっぱほら土地も高いでしょ。あんな広い芝生の庭で、しかも平屋建てで庭もでかい、みんな週末バーベキューやってる。 それは日本人にとってすごい憧れだっただろうし、そういう時代を通り越してきてまだそれがあったっていうことが多分すごくて。
なんか根岸はさまざまな部隊が結局ちっちゃいここにいたわけですよね。みんながみんな結構仲が良かったんですよね。本当部隊を超えて根岸で働いてる人って従業員っていうことで根岸村ですよね、本当ね。
The fact is, being a young adult, I was like 23, 24 when I got there. So that was my really chance to grow up. And that short time, like a lot of our guys, just being there for a year or two, it made their life. It sparked something different in their life. They think about things differently. So you're not the same, as when you came there, you're not the same.
When we left Japan, I felt a sense of homesickness, if that's the right word. I mean, that's what it felt like. It felt like homesickness. And I had never felt that anywhere else before.
My husband has been in for 27 years. And we lived in Germany. We've lived in Hawaii. There was nothing that even came close to comparing to the relationship that the people had in Negishi. We made some absolutely amazing friends that we keep to this very day.
I just absolutely love Japan. I think the housekeeper had a lot to do with it. She showed us all the beautiful things that Japan had to offer. It was just so loving. Even though we were part of the military, I felt very much like we were included into the Japanese family.
The country's beautiful. They're simple and they do things the old-fashioned way. And I've always enjoyed that culture.
We were spoiled living in Negishi. That's the bottom line. It wasn't crowded, but we were surrounded by the culture. The Japanese treated us well, and I think a lot of people in Negishi just wanted to return that feeling, to share something with our neighbors. It was great.